Hello everyone, my name is Dusk, and welcome to another episode of Shock's video guides. In this guide, we're going to go over the Hellion expand build versus Zerg. And so, Shock's opponent today is going to be Toxic with 777 points, 78 wins, and 73 losses as rank 1 master. And we're going to show you this build over 3 different games, all against Zergs, and they all do something slightly different. So Toxic is going to be the first opponent. We have Toxic spawning as the red Zerg in the bottom left position. Shoks as the blue Terran in the 1 o'clock position. And so the build that Shoks is going to do is the Hellion expand. It's pretty common. It's actually the standard way to play nowadays against most players, especially in the GSL. Almost every single Terran uses either a former Hellion expand or a cheesy 2-racks. That's becoming less and less popular nowadays, and almost everyone just goes for a Hellion expand or a 1-racks expand. And so the benefits of the Hellion expand is that you get Hellions out really quick, and what that does is prevent the Zerg from spreading their creep too far past their expansion, if you're diligent about it, and it also prevents the Zerg from taking a fast third, because roaches are generally not preferred, as they do delay your mutalisks, and basically Zergs need mutalisks to take map control away from the Terran, or else drops become too much of a problem. And so the build order for the Hellion expand is fairly simple. You go for a standard 10 depot, followed by a 12 racks. And you want to try to wall off with your depot and racks. So there exists 12 racks, and then you want to take your gas at a 13 supply. Just a very standard opener, nothing too risky, and not too economical, and not too cheesy as well. It's the most standard Terran opener, and this basically works against every single matchup: TVT, TVP, TVZ. Now what differs is what you do after this, obviously, how many Marines you make, and if you do decide to go up to factory tech. And because we're doing a Hellion expand, Shoks is going up to factory tech indeed, and his opponent is actually going for a 1-base Baneling bust. And so we're just going to try to show you the versatility of the Hellion expand, even against the extremely all-in builds that Zerg can do. And so probably the main reason why he didn't go for a roach bust was that he scouted that he wasn't close by air, and so Toxic knew that Shoks was cross position, and so because of how slow roaches move, they're not generally favorable if you're going to do kind of all in. So a speed link Baneling is what Toxic is going to be going for this game. And for the Hellion expand, what you want to do is after your barracks is done, you want to make a 15 or 16 depot, and you want to make 2 more Marines. You want to make a factory with your first 100 gas, and then you want to lift your barracks right next to your factory and make a reactor with your next 50 gas. So here comes the factory. And with your first Marine and first SCV, a lot of people, and almost every single Terran player, likes to do a little bit of pressure, even just place down a fake bunker next to their mineral line. They didn't do that this game just because there was no expansion. Toxic didn't 15 hatch. And so Shoks knew something was up. He was still going to try to get as much damage done as possible just with his Marine. And normally against a player who goes 15 hatch, this would basically force a few Marines. It would force the Zerg to pull off drones just to defend against the possible bunker rush. And the Terran knows that it's not going to be successful, but it just generally is annoying to the Zerg, and it delays mining. So it's always something that you can do. Anyway, we have the factory finished, and then you basically want to swap with the reactor building on the racks, and you want to place down your command center at around 440. Swap, and then your next 200 minerals goes towards 2 Hellions. And so generally a lot of Terran players, they like to make a tech lab with this, and with the tech lab you can make a Marauder. And with Marauders, you're able to defend roaches, because some Zergs, they know that Hellion expand is the most common TVZ opener in the game so far, and so they like to metagame the Terran just by producing a few roaches and attacking them, in which case the Terran would only have Hellions to defend against roaches, and so it becomes quite problematic, especially when you're expanding. And so making a Marauder is a wise choice. It looks like because Shoks didn't scout the expansion, and due to the cross position, he is going to be going for a Marine first. He's probably going to make a Marauder shortly afterwards, and just going out with 4 Hellions. You generally don't want to move out with 2 Hellions, just because if a Zerg did rush speed, such as this game, they can surround your 2 Hellions, and you really need your Hellions to gain critical mass before you can do a lot of damage with them. And so we do have Toxic coming in with the Baneling bust right now against a single Marine defending, and his Hellion's completely out of position. And so baneling busting, even though when there's a depot down, not the best choice, but now a mass ton of Zerglings now in Shock's base. Fortunately though, all the banelings died on the supply depot instead of the workers, and so he is still able to preserve his worker count. So basically, Shox knows that this Zerg is super all in. He just needs to make sure that he kills these lings and prevents any subsequent all in, and he's already ahead, just because he already has his own expansion and he has superior technology to deal with the Zerglings. And right now, Toxic, because his all in failed, the only thing he can do is all in, continually all in until it stops working, and so. More Lings coming out right now, and these Lings fighting these Hellions, not very good control from Shox right now, losing a few Hellions, but the whole point of the Hellion expand is just to make sure that the Zerg constantly produces Lings, constantly has to worry about the presence of Hellions. Obviously that this game, it's not really a representative of what a standard Zerg vs Terran is, just because the Zerg didn't expand, and so we're just going to fast forward this a little bit. Basically, the Zerg tries to all-in Shock some more with constant baneling busts, but the problem is that he has to waste all his banelings on supply depots, and all of his Zerglings just die to Hellions, because Hellions are designed to do well against Zerglings. So here comes the last try, and the game's over. Shock's second opponent is going to be BNY Lua. He is a rank 14 Grandmaster with 437 points. 91 wins and 68 losses. We have Shock spawning as the red Terran in the 6 o'clock position. His opponent is BNY Loa, or I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but he is the blue Zerg spawning in the 9 o'clock position. And so it is a close by air Shattered Temple game, which means that the Zerg is basically just going to be able to scout completely what Terran's going to do, and there's not much he can do about it, but it's not that big of a deal. His natural is going to be a little bit easier to get compared to cross spawn, but overall it's pretty balanced matchup. And so we have the Helion expand this game as well. We're going to go for a 10 depot once again, followed by a 12 racks and a 13 gas. I'm just going to speed a little bit forward through this game, and BNY Lao is actually going for a 15 hatch, and so this is going to be a somewhat standard Terran versus Zerg game. Here comes down to 12 racks, and then 13 gas. 13 gas, there you go. Meanwhile, BNY Lao is going for a 15 hatch, scouting with his initial worker, because he knows that you can't really scout with your overlord at the barracks, since a marine can pop out and kill it. And so he's just playing a little bit safe. And now you make 2 marines after your first racks finishes. You also start your depot immediately. With your first 100 gas, you want to make a factory. And then with your 50 gas right after that, you want to make a reactor on your barracks. And so your orbital actually begins after you queue up your first marine and supply depot as well. Now the first marine is sent always to go harass the Zerg, especially with this bunker rush, and basically the mindset of the Terran is that he knows this bunker rush isn't supposed to do damage, it's not supposed to actually finish, it's just supposed to make the drones pull off and delay mining, but in this case, because of the really nice positioning, it actually is going to finish, and so Terrans really like to place their bunkers in the most obscure and difficult to reach positions. As you can see here, you really want it so that if your SCV is on this side, they have to go all the way around, or if they're here, they have to go all the way around to harass that, and then when it moves over here, they have to go all the way around. And so you want to just have it in the most difficult to reach spot while within the range of the hatchery, and make it accessible, or as little, or as difficult to be accessed as possible. Sorry. Now we have the Hellions coming out right now with the reactor swap. You want to position your factory above your racks so that you can lift up your barracks immediately, have your factory land without any downtime in between. Here we go. Not a perfect swap, but anyway. And now Shox, this game, he actually didn't bother expanding afterwards, because he knows that this game is basically over just because the bunker rush worked. Generally this isn't supposed to work, and so with this thing, with the bunker rush there, it's going to make it really hard for BNY Lua to block the ramp, which makes it very easy for Hellion to get into the main, especially with the damaged queen here. So we have the first two Hellions coming out. Shock's making the tech lab on the barracks, and this allows them to make marauders in case BNY Lao is going for roaches, and it also allows the swap from the factory back to the barracks so that he can make siege tanks later on. So non-speed Zerglings versus Hellions, really no competition there. And now the Hellions are in the main phase, and this is basically a massive, massive problem for Zerg. He really can't deal with this without speedlings or a few queens or spine crawlers, and he has none of these things in his main, but Shock's going to be going for the natural, and this is a pretty wise choice, just because going up to the main, a lot of players, they like to hide speedlings up here, and then when you go up they do a surround your Hellions, and it's kind of risky. So that's why a lot of players in the GSL, they take what damage that they can do onto the Zerg at the natural, and they don't bother going out to the main. Unless if it's not blocked by the queen, and sometimes they like to poke up, but generally it's considered a risky play. And so right now we got just a ton of Hellions into the main. There's really nothing the Zerg can do at this point. And this video is basically just to show the opener. It's not really, the bunker rush is just a cherry on top. The opener is still going to be the same. This is about when Shox should expand. Yeah, I mean he kind of just stopped trying after the bunker rush finished just because the game was already over. And now we're going to go into game 3. Shox's final opponent is going to be Ruxin. He is rank 48 Grandmaster with 350 points, 130 wins, and 117 losses. Shox will be playing as a red Terran, spawning in the 9 o'clock position. His opponent is Ruxin, spawning as the blue Zerg in the 3 o'clock position. And it is cross position Lost Temple, or Shadow Temple, sorry, and this makes for a pretty good macro game most of the time. And so we just have standard openers. I'm just going to fast forward through this. The build order for Helion Expand once again is 10 depot. Then a 12 racks. As you can see, the worker is rallied there. 12 racks, followed by a 13 gas. When it gets to 13 gas, when your barracks is finished, make a marine, make a depot, make an orbital. Marine, depot, orbital. You can delay your orbital or supply depot a little bit if you know they're not going to be aggressive. And now the orbital is done. First 100 gas goes to factory. Second 50 gas goes to reactor. And the Zerg 15 hatched this game, so it's going to be somewhat of a macro game. And right now, Shox isn't planning on doing any bunker rushes because he wasn't able to scout the Zerg in time to put down the bunker, so there wasn't any point. And Ruxin actually doing a pretty interesting build. He's trying to metagame Shox, basically. He knows that this is probably going to be a Helion expand, so he's going for roaches. And if you can get enough roaches at the front of the Terran before he gets out marauders, the game's basically over, just because Marines don't really do damage to roaches very well. And and you really need marauders just to damage it. So right now Ruxin is running his drones around. This is really not the best choice. I think he should have just basically done this and ran his drones into the main and just waited for the Hellions to pop. That way he wouldn't have lost the 6 drones or whatever. And so right now Shox did see the roaches, so he has to make a bunker. He doesn't yet have a marauder out, but it should be out in time, and he's gonna go for a counterattack because you really can't do Hellion or do damage to Hellions, do damage to roaches with just Hellions. But now roach is out, so he is safe to this. However, because of the nice positioning of the Overlord, Ruxin is gonna be able to take out this depot, that depot, and probably a reactor here. And so the game progresses on as just as a normal macro game. Shox goes a little bit, a few marauders, and just primarily Marine tank. He does win it in the end, but it just basically involves whatever standard macro play that that Terran vs Zerg metagame is right now, and there's a lot of drops and a lot of Marine tank. And so that's basically how you do the Helion expand. It's the most common opener in TVZ. It's a very, very solid build. It's good against almost everything, as you can see, and it basically prevents the Zerg from getting a third. It prevents the spreading of creep. If they didn't go roaches, he did go roaches in this case, but because he went roaches, his Mutalisks are going to be delayed, and you need either Mutalisks or Infestors in the matchup, and so roaches delay both of them. And so that's why a lot of pro players like Nesty and Leonok, they don't go for roaches early game. So my name is Dusk, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys later.